All right. So, okay, so if you're here and you're using the Chumash, starts at the very bottom of 883.
And if you're not there, where does it start?
Well, it depends. If you have the same Chumash, it still begins on 883. If you have a different Chumash, it
No,
begins
okay.
on a different page. And if you have no Chumash, it doesn't begin anywhere. How's that?
Okay.
Great. And here's Irv. Hi.
Should I go
Wherever you feel like.
Here,
You are.
yeah, that's fine. That's for you.
Oh, okay.
And
Should talk about what?
Oh, sorry.
and for the context, the very bottom of 883. All right. So Numbers 20, verse 1. Vayavo'u v'nei Yisrael kol ha'edah midbatzin b'chodesh harishon v'yeshev ha'am b'kadesh v'tamot sham Miriam v'tikaver sham. So the entire congregation of the children of Israel, the Israelites, came to the wilderness of Tzin in the first month, and the people dwelt at Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried. Okay, so Kol Ha'edah. So before we look at what Rashi wrote, what's the problem that he's trying to solve? Okay, the entire congregation of the children of Israel, Kol Ha'edah. Anybody pick up on what Rashi's problem is?
Some had already died.
Well, many had already died. All right, so let me try it this way. So this is what it says. Vayavo'u v'nei Yisrael kol ha'edah midbar sin. And the children of Israel came, all the congregation, to the wilderness of Tzin. So suppose it simply said Vayavo'u v'nei Yisrael midbar sin. And the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Tzin. Would you say, wait, it's missing something? No, right? So the Kol Ha'edah is somewhat superfluous, right? I mean, that's Rashi. He's going to look and say, why are these words here, right? Why are these words here? They don't detract, but they don't add. They're superfluous words, right? And God, therefore, doesn't want to use superfluous words. So what does Kol Ha'edah add to our understanding? That if it didn't say Kol Ha'edah, just said Vayavo'u v'nei Yisrael, and Rashi's answer is, it tells us that this is the complete congregation. That is to say, the group that's going to enter the land of Israel, because this is now at the end of the 40 years, right? And everybody who was going to die in the desert had already died. Okay. Vatamot sham Miriam. Miriam died there. Okay. Now, why is the passage relating Miriam's death juxtaposed with the passage of the red cow? Okay. Now, you don't know this just from what we have because we're on the triennial. Yeah. Right? But this parasha is called Hukkat. Hukkat, so Zot Hukkat let's see. What is it? What is the words? The first words say. Zot Hukkat HaTorah. All right, this is the law of the Torah, which God had. I thought it said Hukkat HaTorah, and then I said, wait, that doesn't make sense. So, in rabbinic thought, there's two kinds of mitzvot. Okay, there's hukim and there's mishpatim. Okay, and this is the chok of the red cow. Okay, a chok. Let's start the other way. A mishpat is a law that makes sense. That if we were to start a community and we didn't have the law from God, and we said, what are the rules that we would follow? We would think like stealing is bad, right? Most societies posit that stealing is bad, right? Most societies posit that murder is bad, right? Most societies, things like that. So that's a mishpat. It's a law that has a rational purpose behind it. And then there's a hok. A hok is basically, you ask the question, well, why do we do this? Because I'm God and I said.
No
rational. And then, of course, the sages will argue, is this law a mishpat? Is it a hok? Like I would say, like if you throw out, is Shabbat, is that a mishpat or a hok? I would say it's actually both, right? I mean, the fact that we need a day of rest, you could say that's a mishpat, right? The fact that it has to be from sundown of Friday to sundown Saturday, and not from noon Wednesday to noon third, that's a hok, right?
Yeah.
At least I think, right? So it has aspects of both. But the hok par excellence is the para aduma, the red cow, or the red heifer, right? Because you remove corpse impurity from somebody by sprinkling on them the ashes of the red cow. Okay, fine. So if you're impure, the ashes of the para aduma make you pure. But if you're pure, they make you impure.
That's one of the big...
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like imagine a bar of soap. Here, take this soap. If you're dirty, it'll make you clean. But if you're clean, it'll make you dirty. Right? So that's...
Why wouldn't it make you cleaner?
Well, see, that's why it's a hok.
Right.
That's why it's a hok. Okay? So that's what happened right before this. Right? So for Rashi and for the sages, often we have this concept of smichut parshiot. That is to say, and I don't know how you say that in English. I mean, here it says juxtaposition. In other words, thing X happens, and then thing Y happens. And they're just narrated in that order, and from the surface, you wouldn't necessarily see a connection. But, and we know right from science that correlation does not necessarily prove causation, right? But for Rashi, it often does. Okay, so that the two are related. Like, for example, and you don't always notice this because of the way the parshiot are divided, right? But like the parsha Haye Sarah begins with Sarah's death. You don't necessarily notice, but the immediate thing that happened right before Sarah's death was the Akedah. Okay, so the sages say, oh, Sarah found out. You almost did what? And that's why she died. Okay, so here Rashi's question is, so we just learned about the ashes of the red heifer, and now we're learning about Miriam's death. what's the connection between the two? To teach you that just as sacrifices bring atonement, so the death of the righteous secure atonement, right? So what is the para adama about? It's about forgiveness of sin. Miriam's death, forgiveness of sin. Now you may look and say, but that's a Christian concept, right? That the death of the righteous brings atonement. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say, right, anything that the Christians have, they got from us.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, now they may have taken it in a different direction, right? But they got it from us, okay, including the idea that death brings atonement. Okay, now this last one is really interesting because you have to read. I think you have to read under it. Vatamot Miriam died there. Af hi b'neshikat meta. She died through a kiss from God's mouth rather than by the angel of death. Right? In other words, the truly righteous die with a kiss. Okay? Which is it. I mean, right, most of us, if we imagine that we all know that we're going to die, how do you want to die? Peacefully in bed, right? You want to be fine, dead, right? You don't want to linger, you don't want to suffer.
Right.
You want to be fine and then dead, right? Preferably in your sleep, right? And that's the way Miriam died. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I remember reading in Every Man's Guide to the Talmud,
Yeah.
a discussion about different ways to die and the ways Jews aspire to die is described in the Talmud. And I remember one comparison was either softly, like removing a hair from a saucer of milk, as opposed to pulling a thorny branch up out of the throat.
Okay, yeah. Right? So that's right. So that's the way, right? That's the way you want to die. Right? And that's the way Miriam died. She died with a kiss from God's mouth rather than the angel of death. Okay? Why does it not say by God's mouth as it does with Moses, right? When Moses died, it'll say, Vayamot Sham Moshe. I don't know if I'm quoting exactly, but Vayamot Sham Moshe, Moses died there, Al Pi Adonai, by God's mouth. Okay? Why doesn't it say this about Miriam? Because it's not respectful to speak about God in that way. But by Moses, and then it brings by Aaron, it also says Al Pi Adonai, by God's mouth. It's not respectful to speak about God in that way vis-a-vis Miriam. Okay, now you're all looking at me puzzled. Because it's not modest.
Well, that's what I figured. It had to do
Right?
with she's a
I
woman.
think, I
that's
mean,
my
Rashi
guess.
doesn't really explain what he's saying, but maybe to Rashi it's self-evident, right? Because it's just not nice to think that God would kiss a woman on the mouth, right? Because presumably God is male. I don't know. So it's not nice. It's immodest to say that God did
God
that.
gets more and more complex as we go along. God gets more and more complex.
God gets more and more complex. How so?
Yeah. All these different aspects.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right, sure. I mean, the biblical God is different than the God of the rabbis, different than the God of the philosophers, different than the God of Kabbalah, right? But I just thought it was cute that they're worried about what you might think about God, that he was, God was not chaste, God was not modest, right?
Well, considering when the common people writing commentaries for a living, that was certainly true. You did not.
For sure.
Yeah.
Except Rashi was French, so who knows?
Yeah, but
Right,
French in the
that's
11th century is not French to,
20th century.
I don't know.
Very sure value.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, so the congregation had no water, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. had no water. V'lo haya mayim la'edah. Mikan shekol 40 shana haya lahem ha'be'er b'zchut Miriam. Right? You know about Miriam's well. Miriam had a magical well that went with her wherever she went. Like Mary had a little lamb and Miriam had a little well. Okay? And everywhere that Miriam went, the well was sure to go. Right? And now Miriam has died.
Oh my goodness.
So there's no Miriam's well anymore. Right? And so, and again, does the text explicitly say that? No. But smichut parshiot, right? Juxtaposition of events, right? Miriam died, there's no water. It doesn't say because Miriam died, there's no water.
It just says the congregation. It just
Right.
says, yeah.
But it's not an unreasonable conclusion either.
Right.
Right? I mean, there's certainly a correlation, even if there's not an explicit causation, right? Miriam died, there's no water. Why not? Because Miriam had this magic well. And now that Miriam died, no magic well. Okay, so they're mad at Moses, right? What?
So I was thinking the kvetching people always, they're going to get mad. Like, Moses is, of course, the leader. He is responsible.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Right? And so they say, if only we had died with the death of our brothers before the Lord. If only we had died. Right? We wish, right? Uncle says we wish that we had died. With the death of our brothers, okay? Who are the brothers that died? Plague. The brothers that died by plague. Who exactly? I don't know, but there's lots of times that the people died of plague. Right? I mean, last week, Korach's.
I was thinking of Korach.
Right?
Yeah.
After the sin of Korach, right? Korach and his immediate crew, they get shiolated, and that's 250 of them, but then 14,000 others die of the plague. Right? And so now this is right after. So they say, we wish we had died with our brothers. Who? The ones who died of plague. Why? Death from thirst is more dreadful than death by plague. Right? And I mean, I don't know. I'm not a physician, but I would imagine that, so doctors are poor. I would imagine that dying of thirst is particularly gruesome as opposed to dying of most illnesses.
Oh, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Certainly, dying by plague is unpleasant. But if you were to ask me if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather die from plague than from thirst.
Okay.
It's said to be very painful.
Right. That's Michael Zippor.
Oh.
Okay. He said, yes, that dying of plague is unpleasant, but dying of thirst is particularly painful. So if he had to choose, he would rather die of plague than die of thirst. So thank you for confirming. On behalf of Rashi, you have our gratitude.
We'll keep it in mind.
We'll keep that in mind when figuring out, right? All right, and then the last one is just a grammatical point. I'm not even gonna delay on it. Okay, so now we're gonna skip ahead a little bit. Moses raised his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, when an abundance of water gushed forth, and the congregation and their livestock drank. Okay, let's look at the text a little bit before we go on there. Okay, Moses and Aaron, I'll just read, right? Moses and Aaron came away from the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. The presence of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, you and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes order the rock to yield its water. Thus you shall produce water from them from the rock, and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you out of this rock? And Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice, with his rod. Out came copious water, and the community and their beasts drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them. Okay, very puzzling,
Yes.
right? So Moses raised his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. Okay, so Rashi's first question, why twice? Why twice, right? And very often, I mean, I think about all of the sermons that I've given on this particular incident, okay, including one that I'm going to give Saturday morning. And it never occurred to me to ask the question, why twice, right? What do we usually focus on? Right? We
That he
usually
struck the rock.
that he struck the rock. God didn't say strike the rock. God said speak to the rock. But Moses struck it. But not only did he strike it, he struck it twice.
That's double the
Right? So double your pleasure, double your fun.
right.
Right? So Rashi says, why twice? Because the first time he drew out only a few drops, since God had not commanded him to strike it, but you shall speak to the rock. Okay. However, this is fascinating. They spoke to a different rock, and nothing came out. Right? That's the problem, right? In other words, according to Rashi, the problem is because why? Because he doesn't want to paint Moses as disobedient.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is really a stretch.
Right? I mean, the old Washington rule, right, which never attribute to malevolence that which can be explained by incompetence. Right?
Okay.
Think about it,
I
Earth.
don't have to think that much about it.
Right? So
Hello.
he did speak to the rock. He spoke to the rock, but no water came out
It had to be
because
the
it was the wrong rock. It was the wrong rock. So then, what? So then he thinks, well, maybe I ought to strike it first, because previously in Exodus he was told to strike the rock. Okay? So they came upon that very rock and struck it. Right? So for Rashi, this is kind of like a legitimate mistake. It's not disobedience.
willful disobedience.
It's not willful disobedience, right? It's he did speak to the rock, but it was the wrong rock, and that's why water didn't come out. And then he said, I need to strike it. Okay. So, since you did not have faith in me, Scripture reveals that if it were not for this sin alone, they would have entered the land, so that it should not be said of them, the sin of Moses and Aaron was like the sin of the... Right? So, we need to look back at 11:22. All right. So this is the people are fetching that they don't have meat to eat. They only have this manna. And hey, we're not vegans. We'd like some meat. Right? And so Moses says, the people who are with me number 600,000 men, yet you say I will give them enough meat to eat for a whole month. But he's talking to God. Right? Could enough flocks and herds be slaughtered to suffice them, or could all the fish of the sea be gathered for them to suffice them? And the Lord answered Moses, is there a limit to the Lord's power? You shall soon see whether what I have said happens to you or not. Right? So there he's trying to provide the meat, and he's going to God, it's impossible. And God says, wait a second, I'm God. I can do this. Okay? So That's worse than what he did here, right? But there, he did it in private, right? It's one thing to say to God, I'm not sure you could pull this off, but he's just talking to God. Here, he's doing it in public, right? And it's much worse, right? It's much worse, right? So to sanctify me, for had you spoken to the rock and it had given forth water, I would have been sanctified in the eyes of the congregation. They would have said, if this rock, which neither speaks nor hears and does not require sustenance, fulfills the word of the omnipresent, how much more should we? Right? In other words, so and I have a totally different take on this, okay? But I'm not going to go there because then you don't have to come Saturday morning to hear what I have to say. Okay. But how is speaking to the rock sanctifying God's name, right? How is it a Kiddush Hashem? And Rashi says, because the people would look, Moses would speak to the rock and he'd say, rock, give water. God says, give water, so give water, and the rock does it. And then the people look and they say, well, look, if this rock is obedient to God, right, how much more should we be obedient to God? Because we have much more to be thankful to God for than this rock does, right? And it's the same thing. I mean, you know, this folk explanation, why do we cover the challah when we say Kiddush, right? Why do we cover the challah when we say Kiddush? Because the challah, we shouldn't hurt the challah's feelings, that we're saying Kiddush before we say Motzi, so we cover up the challah, and then the challah doesn't know we're saying Kiddush, and then we say Kiddush, but the challah hasn't heard, and then we take off the challah cover and we say Motzi, and the challah is very happy, right? And I was explaining that to the kids, and one kid, very smart kid, says, that's ridiculous, right? The challah doesn't have eyes, doesn't have ears, can't hear, and if the challah could hear that you're saying Kiddush first, probably covering it up wouldn't really accomplish what you were trying to do anyway, so this is crazy. And I said, you're exactly right, okay? But it seems to me that if the tradition is telling us to be concerned for the feelings of the challah, how much more so should we be concerned with the feelings of our fellow human being, right? And that's the lesson, right? So similarly here, the people are drawing that same lesson, right? If this rock is obedient to God, how much more should we be obedient to God?
Couldn't there be another explanation in favor of Moses? That hitting a rock and getting water is also a phenomenal event that God could be responsible for, or God could not have. Why did God let water flow from the hitting? He could have held that back.
He could have, right? He could have. Look, there's a lot of things that you could say, why did God this? Why did God that, right? I mean, if you look at, I said this year, I don't remember if you were there, that who was really responsible, and actually there's a hint of it in Rashi, the sin of the golden calf, right? Whose fault is it, right? There's plenty of fault to go around, but at least some of the fault is God's, right? Because why do the people have gold, right? Because God says to them right before they leave Egypt, go to your Egyptian neighbors, ask to borrow their gold jewelry, and then take it with you. Where are they going? The desert.
They
need gold in the desert,
Thou
right?
shalt not steal.
Right? What?
Thou shalt not.
Well, okay, but look, the tradition has problem with that too, but they say it's actually reparations. It's reparations. They worked for 400 years for free, so they get reparations, right? But the point is, who needs gold in the desert, right? Why do they have gold? Whose fault is it that they have gold in the first place? It's God's fault, right? So no gold, no golden calf, right? They may have wanted to, but they wouldn't have been able to if they didn't have the gold, right? So similarly, yeah, I mean, God could have, but I don't, but that's, I have no answer to that, but I don't think that that's really what the Bible is worried about, right? The Bible, the point is that, but I think without getting into too much detail, I think the fact that God said speak and Moses struck instead is significant. Is significant, okay? And you know what exactly, why, and I won't go into there, but because then I don't have anything for Saturday morning. But I think it's significant. Okay. So now, verse 13. Hema me merivah. These are the waters of dispute, the waters of contention. Asher ravu v'nei Yisrael et Adonai v'yikadesh bam. Where the children of Israel contended with the Lord, and he was sanctified through them, through these waters. How? I don't know. All right, these are the waters of dispute. This is great. These are the ones mentioned elsewhere. Pharaoh's astrologers saw these when they foresaw that the Savior of Israel would be smitten through water, and that is why they decreed every son who is born you shall cast into the Nile. Okay, I have to unpack this a little bit. But, right, so the Bible believes in astrology. Right? The Egyptian astrologers, the Egyptian magicians, they know what they're doing, but sometimes they're a little bit off. Right? So before Moses' birth, this is from the Talmud, the Egyptian astrologers had a vision, and they said, the Savior of Israel, the one who's going to bring Israel out of Egypt, is about to be born, but we have foreseen that he will be smitten through water. Right? That he will be smitten through water. So Pharaoh says, throw all the baby boys into the Nile, because the Savior of Israel is going to be smitten by water. The data were correct. The interpretation of the data was wrong, right? He was smitten by water,
But not in the Nile.
but not from the Nile. Exactly. He was smitten through the water from this rock. Okay, so, right? So what they saw was accurate. How they interpreted it was not, right? And that's what this is all about. All right. And he was sanctified through them, because Moses and Aaron died because of them, because of these waters. When God judges as Holy One, he is feared and sanctified by mankind, right? As it is said, like in Leviticus, I am sanctified by those close to me. That's after Nadav and Abihu die, right? And I mean, that's very interesting. I don't want to go there. Okay, but the point is that Rashi says, right, that how did these waters sanctify God? Because people saw that Moses and Aaron died because of these waters, and they appreciated all the more so God's power. I'm not satisfied by this explanation, but that's what Rashi says. Okay. Anyone? All right. So, verse 15. Our fathers went down to Egypt, and we sojourned in Egypt for a long time. V'yidu avotenu Mitzrayim, our ancestors, our forefathers went down to Egypt. V'nesha b'Mitzrayim yamim rabim, and we dwelt in Egypt for many days. V'yareu lanu Mitzrayim v'la avotenu, and the Egyptians mistreated us and our forefathers. Okay, we endured many hardship and our forefathers. Okay, now this is interesting, to me at least. From here, we learn that when Israel is afflicted with punishment, the patriarchs grieve in the grave. Right, you have a puzzled look.
It's just a stretch.
Yeah, it's a stretch, right? I mean, it would seem to be that when they're saying, and by the way, they're saying this to the king of Edom, right? This is a whole different thing. The business with the water from the rock, that's done. Now they want to pass through Edom
Across the Jordan River.
and across the Jordan River, and the Edomites don't want to let them. Right, but the Edomites, they're our cousins. They're our cousins because they're descended from Esau, right? And they're our cousins, but they don't want to let us. But Moses is telling the king of Edom the whole ganze Geschichte, what happened to us, and so on and so forth, because the Edomites don't know because they didn't have internet then, right? And so, yes, it seems that on the surface, the Egyptians dealt harshly with us and our ancestors. Why? Because our ancestors were the ones who went down there, and we dwelt there for a really long time. And it's not just that they were bad to us, they were bad to our ancestors. But if you think about it, that's actually not so, right? Because at first, the Hebrews were welcome guests, right? They were given the land of Goshen, and they were, right? It's only later on that the Israelites were enslaved, right? And anyway, normally when we say avotenu, right, we don't mean our ancestors, right? Like if we say in the Midah, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, right? And then what do we say? Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, right? So, I think that's part of what's going on here. That avotenu is simply right. So first of all, it's not true that the ancestors were mistreated. It's only the more recent generations that were mistreated. But also, I think like avotenu means not just our ancestors in general, but Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right. So how did the Egyptians mistreat them? The way Rashi says, right? When Israel is afflicted with punishment, the patriarchs grieve in the grave, right? Right, and that's how they were afflicted. In the same way that, if a parent sees their child suffer, they suffer, right? They suffer. I mean, and if you look what's going on now, right? What's going on now? It's not just the kids who suffer; it's the parents who suffer. But the parents are suffering twice, really, because they're suffering for themselves because they've been deprived of their children, but they're also suffering knowing that their children are terrified. Right? It's horrible. It's horrible. This is America now.
Oh, right.
But. So the patriarchs suffer when their children suffer, even from the grave. Okay. Please let us pass through your land. We will not pass through fields or vineyards, nor will we drink well water. We will walk along the king's road, and we will turn neither to the right nor to the left until we have passed through your territory. In other words, they're just asking for safe transit. Okay, don't be afraid of us. we're not going to take anything. We just want safe transit. Okay? You have no right to contest the inheritance of the land of Israel since you did not pay the debt. I actually don't know what that means. All right, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. And I don't have there are commentaries on Rashi. I don't have one. I don't know what that means. Does anybody have a sense what that means? Because you did not pay the debt.
They were the children of Esau were enslaved. So
Yeah, okay, that's it. Right. That could definitely be it. That could definitely be it. Absolutely. Thank you, Irv. Right. I mean, because for sure they're saying, yes, even though you are our cousins, right? I mean, and you might say, well, this land was promised to Abraham and his descendants, and we are also descendants of Abraham, right? Because Isaac had Jacob and Esau. We are descended from Esau, which means we're descended from Isaac, which means we're descended from Abraham, right? But Israel says, no, because it's just for us. And maybe it is because we were enslaved for the 400 years, so our compensation is this. I'm not sure. I mean, it is in other words, I just don't know what it means you didn't pay the debt, right? I understand the concept that Jacob was the favored son, just like Isaac was the favored son. You had Isaac and Ishmael. You had Jacob and Esau. Isaac was the favored son. Jacob was the favored son. So don't challenge us for the land of Israel. But on the other hand, we have no desires on your land either, right? Israel is our land. Edom is your land. Just let us pass through. We don't desire to take the land from you, and we don't desire to take the resources.
what's that? Iraq and Jordan now.
That's basically Jordan.
Jordan.
It's Jordan. It's it's the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. In fact, to get back to the previous incident, I went to Petra from Israel.
Rock, yeah.
What?
The Red Rock.
Yeah, the Red Rock. And outside of Petra, there's a place called Wadi Musa. Wadi is like a dry riverbed, an arroyo.
Yeah.
Musa is Arabic for Moses, Moshe.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In Wadi Musa, there is a rock out of which flows a spring. Okay. And they will tell you that this is the very rock. And of course, it's in the Quran too. So, that doesn't mean it really is, but that's why it's called Wadi Musa. Okay. Because that's where the rock that Moses struck. Okay. So it's Jordan. Okay. So, nor will we drink well water. He should have said water from cisterns. Okay. But Moses said to them, we have manna to eat and a well from which to drink, but we will not drink from it. Right? But we will buy food and drink from you for your benefit. Right? From here, we learn that even if a guest has his own provisions, he should buy from the shopkeeper or householder to benefit his host. Okay? And when I read this, I found it fascinating because when we went from Israel to Jordan, we were told anything that is consumable, you may not bring into Jordan. Okay, you may not bring a candy bar. You may not bring a sandwich. You may not bring bottled water. Okay, because part of one of the provisions of the Israel-Jordan peace treaty, because they knew there would be lots of tourism from Israel, and that
Ah,
You got to buy your bottled water in Jordan.
It goes back
Yeah.
to that time.
yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So I found that really fascinating, right? So Moses is saying, look, we'll make it worth your while. We have our own provisions. We don't, but let us through and it'll be worth your while. Okay. But then the Midrash says, but this is politeness, right? You don't go somewhere else and bring your stuff with you. You buy it there, right? It's just menschlichkeit. It's elementary menschlichkeit, right? Interesting, right? I mean, there's nothing that drives me crazier, than seeing people, go to Mexico with a whole suitcase full of food because, oh my God, what are we going to eat there or whatever? I mean, buy your food there, right?
I mean, even when I went there, it was almost 60 years ago. For the first time, you just had to be careful of certain things.
Yeah.
Everything else was fine.
Yeah, but it's also, I don't know, just people being cheap too.
Yeah, true.
All right. We will derech hamelech nelech. We will walk along the king's road. Okay, but derech hamelech also means, like, it literally means the king's road, but it also sort of means the via media, the middle way, and also it means like the right way. Okay. So, meaning we will muzzle our animals so they should not turn to either side to eat. Right? So, we promise you that we will not, it'll be worth your while. We're not going to take anything. No. Okay? And the Edomites didn't let them. Okay, now I'm going to skip it. I'm skipping ahead. Right now, the people are now Aaron. So Aaron dies. Aaron has died, and the people are restive on their journey. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why did you make us leave Egypt to die in the wilderness? There's no bread and no water, and we have come to loathe this miserable food. Okay, we're not happy, Moses. We're not happy. Why did you do this? Okay, so God says, right? God, I mean, the Israelites are very challenging because God constantly. I mean, not
I like fetch all the
they
time.
fetch all the time, but God also doesn't want to be repetitive. So he's constantly coming up with new ways to
Yeah.
punish them, right?
Right.
So now he's sending snakes, right? No,
Or flames,
right?
flying snakes.
Nechashim, it doesn't say flying snake. Nechashim haseraphim, the venomous snakes, or our translation just says the seraph snakes. But seraphim are also angels, but there are certain type of angels that catch on fire. Right? Lisrof is to burn. Okay, they catch on fire from their enthusiasm, right? That's the seraphim, right? They're so like, I mean, the Hebrew word is tit lahavut, which really means literally to go up in flames, but it means enthusiasm. It's hard to translate.
Like the Raiders of the Lost Ark when they came out of the dark.
Right, or even Dogma, that movie with Ben Affleck and right. But anyway, yeah. So
the flaming.
Right, the flaming snakes, literally the burning snakes, because they burn a person with the venom of their fans. Okay, and they bit the people. Right? Why? Measure for measure. Okay, the snake which was smitten for speaking evil to Eve, come and punish those who spread the slander about the manna. Right, because the snake is punished for misuse of speech. So now the snake is the vehicle for punishment for misuse of speech, namely the kvetching, right? And it's also measure for measure. The snake, for which all types of food taste the same, come and punish those ingrates for whom one thing changes into various tastes. Now, I do not know. I am not a reptilologist. I do not know if it is the case that for the snakes all food tastes the same,
I have no idea.
but the Midrash
Yeah.
believes that that is the case, right? And whereas manna is just the opposite, right? Because manna has this amazing property that whatever you want it to taste like, that's what it tastes like. Okay, but even with that, right, the Jews, they don't like the manna. Okay, now this is not the first time that they don't like the manna. And I remember speaking about a few weeks ago that one of the things about the manna is that everybody has it. And therefore it's no good because I want better.
Human nature.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't want this crap that everybody has. I want better stuff. Right? And it doesn't. So anyway, so the snakes, it's measure for measure, right? Because the snake, everything tastes the same, so you get the opposite. It's all the same food, but it tastes like whatever you want it to, but you're still not happy. Still fine. Have some snakes. Right. Oh, I was on an El Al flight once. I won't tell you the whole story, but the flight attendants were passing out sandwiches
Right.
because we weren't going to eat dinner until later. And the lady behind me looks at the sandwich and she says, "Ugh, is this dinner?" And the male flight attendant says, "No, ma'am, it's just a snake."
You think he knew what he
Little
was talking
accent.
about?
No, it was with an accent
Yeah.
because
It was
if you had an
it's
Israeli,
like
if you
snack.
read
Okay,
SNACK, you
right,
might
right,
pronounce it
right.
snake.
Yeah.
So
Oh, snack, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, a short A instead of
Yeah,
a long A.
right.
Thought maybe he was a biblical scholar.
No, it's just a snake.
Just a snack.
Yeah, it's just a snake. So people do eat snakes on El Al, even though it's kosher. Okay. So then the people, "Oh, we're sorry, Moses. We're really sorry. We have sinned we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he remove the snakes from us." So Moses prayed on behalf of the people. From here, we learn that someone who is asked to forgive should not be so cruel so as not to forgive. Right? They said, "Moses, we're sorry. Please ask God to get rid of the snakes," and he did so.
He was with them in Jordan then.
What?
Moses was with them in Jordan.
Yeah. But Aaron has died. Aaron dies in this parsha.
Yeah.
But Moses doesn't die until the very end of the Torah.
Okay.
So we've got the whole book of Deuteronomy
Yeah.
to come, which is Moses' farewell speech. Right? And Moses dies only at the end of Deuteronomy. Al pi Adonai, at the mouth of God, right? Because apparently, it's weird. Heterosexual kissing is bad, but
right.
homosexual kissing is fine, right? That's the lesson, right? Take that, Colorado bakers. But God buries him. God buries him, and no one knows where he's buried until this day. Okay? Great. Questions, comments, rebuttals, complaints?
Could Al-Pi Adonai mean not kissing, but just words coming out of
Sure, it
God's
could. I mean,
mouth?
it
the
means
mouth of
right.
God.
It means by the mouth of
Right.
God, right? But Rashi understands it, basing himself on the Midrashic tradition. Mita b'neshika, death by a kiss.
What's it? I would think that would be an important word to include if it meant, if that's what the.
All right, but I agree with you, but there are different levels, right? I mean, and there's the biblical level, and then there's the rabbinic level, okay? And at the biblical level, I'm sure Al Pi Adonai simply means by God's word. And it doesn't even have to mean verbal word, right? He died because God wanted him to die,
Well,
right?
You're right. In the New Testament, that another level.
Right.
Death by a
Yeah.
kiss.
Right,
Who
death
kissed-
by a kiss, for
who
sure.
kissed Jesus, right?
Right. Judas kissed Jesus,
Right.
and that was, but the rabbinic idea is that, and if you think about it, right, I mean, to get back to it, that is the ideal death, right? Like I said, you want to, die, you suddenly and quickly and painlessly, and that is to this day in Hebrew it's called mitah b'neshika, death by a kiss, right? So, all right, thanks, folks.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
See you next